You were never the problem. You weren't too much. You weren't too emotional. You didn't make her uncomfortable. And you certainly didn't scare her away by caring too much. But here you are, sitting alone on your couch, staring at your phone, wondering where it all went wrong. Thinking, asterisk, if I'm so available, so caring, why am I feeling invisible? Why am I being ghosted or sidelined or overlooked by someone I gave everything to? Asterisk. You see, there's a myth we all swallow when we start dating, especially good-hearted men, that love equals availability. K, that if you're always there, always responsive, always present, love will follow. If she texts, you respond. If she needs a favor, you step up. She's sad, you listen. You believe that if you just do enough, she'll feel enough, give enough, love enough. But that's not how real connection works, because you weren't built to be a servant. You were built to be whole. But somewhere along the way, you learned the survival strategy. Be available. Be useful. Be reachable. Maybe you grew up in a home where love was conditional. Inner was quiet, unless you did what was expected. Maybe affection only came when you did well. Or maybe you were loved, but only when you made life smoother for others. So you learned availability equals love, and you carried that into adulthood. On the surface, it looked good, okay? You were dependable, reliable. She appreciated your stability. Friends told you you were a catch. Yet underneath, something felt off. That pull toward her felt a lot like chasing. You'd scroll through messages, hoping she'd text you back. 3 dots appear and disappear, and your heart pulses. You sent a kind text yesterday, okay, but no reply today. And suddenly, you re-angry at yourself. You shouldn't have texted again. Shouldn't have shown interest. Shouldn't have tried so hard. But the pull comes anyway, because availability became the placeholder for worth. You valued yourself through her eyes. If she paid attention, you felt alive. If she didn't, humility became shame, and you decided you must be too much. Then there were the moments you can pin down canceled plans that didn't hurt at first until patterns emerged. When your consistent presence suddenly made you less interesting, when out of nowhere you weren't invited. And you thought, I gave so much, but I keep getting less. So there's a voice inside you whispering, maybe I am the problem. But here, as a truth most men never hear. Asterisk, your availability, ice and tea. The issue, your emptiness, is. Asterisk, when you give from a place of emptiness, trying to fill a void, to win approval, to calm anxiety. Your kindness isn't generous. It's performative. It's attached to outcome. It's focused on her response, not on your truth. You become conditional. If I'm good, then you'll stay. And that's attractive to no one, because real connection requires risk, not calculation. Because here's the thing, no woman wants a project, a checklist, or a placeholder. I like how you care about. Why do you disappear when I don't respond? She says. When I don't appreciate you, you disappear. Where does that come from? It comes from fear that if she doesn't see you, then you don't exist. Fear that love is a limited resource, and if you're not giving it all, it won't stick. But girl after girl, scenario after scenario, the outcome is the same. The more you give yourself away, the less they value the gift. And that leads to a deeper wound. You start internalizing rejection as personal failure. Here's what you need to hear. Asterisk, you are not the problem. Asterisk, the problem is the emotional pattern embedded in your core, one where being available became your identity. Instead of asking, am I safe to share myself? You asked, asterisk, am I safe to lose because I didn't give enough? Asterisk, it's not your fault you grew up this way. It's the result of an emotional economy that equated love with service. But now, it's time to rewrite that economics. Clarity, like a quiet storm, when you realize, asterisk, I have been abandoning myself. Asterisk, in every text typed, every apology whispered, every plan canceled, to make her comfortable. You sacrificed yourself. You gave her your body before you brought yourself. You owned her mood before you owned your own. And they weren't scars, they were defaults. You were never the problem. Your emotional programming was. And now you're waking up. But clarity isn't comfort. It's disorienting. It feels like a ghost walking through your body, one that says, asterisk, what if everything I thought I was doing to be loved was actually making me less lovable? So you sit there, your reflection floating on the TV screen, and you wonder, how did everything I've done in the name of love become my greatest vulnerability? Asterisk, it's because you gave to be seen, not to be known. You gave to avoid your own emptiness, not to share your abundance. You thought loving meant never having needs. That's upside down. Love thrives in mutuality, not martyrdom. It's time to close this chapter, a chapter titled When Availability Became Identity. It's a chapter where kindness was priced in emotional currency, where you were either spending or borrowing from your worth. It ends when you learn to value yourself without her noticing, without drama, without headlines, without parades. For now, sit in that stillness. Let the story of who you think you should be and who you are resonate. Tomorrow will begin the next phase. Asterisk, how to show up from abundance, not emptiness. Asterisk, you were never the problem, but your giving from empty was, and it's time it stopped. So what do you do when you realize you've been giving from emptiness? When you see how often you've abandoned yourself in the name of being the good one. You don't just pull away. You don't swing to the other extreme, becoming cold, avoidant, unavailable. You don't trade emotional presence for detachment and call it strength. That's not healing. It's hiding. Real healing begins when you finally ask yourself the question you've been avoiding your whole life. What am I really afraid will happen if I stop overgiving? Sit with that. What happens when you stop answering texts immediately? What happens when you don't rearrange your schedule every time she reaches out? What happens when you say no with your chest instead of a shaky whisper? You fear being left. You fear being unloved. You fear that without your usefulness, you are disposable. But that's a lie that came from a wound, not from reality. And the only way out is through. Because beneath every yes you didn't want to say was a child who thought, if I just make them happy, I'll be safe. Beneath every I'm when you weren't. Fine was a boy who believed his sadness made him a burden. The needy part, the jealous part, the angry part. Start by meeting the parts of yourself you've ignored. Can you hold your own fear without running? Can you feel your frustration without apologizing for it? Can you sit with the part of you that feels unworthy and instead of silencing it, look it in the eye and say, I see you. You're allowed to be here, but you don't get to drive anymore. The part that wanted to scream when she took you for granted, but instead just smiled. That doesn't mean you never care again. It means your care is no longer a transaction. You don't give because you want her to choose you. You give because your cup is full. And if she doesn't meet you with equal fullness, you don't beg, you don't bargain, you walk, not out of punishment, but out of clarity. All of that energy didn't die. You buried it. You pushed it down because you thought it would make you unlovable. But ironically, it's that very suppression that made you feel invisible. What you hide, you hand over to others. What you own, you reclaim. And beneath every carefully crafted message, every late night call you took, even when you were exhausted, was a man hoping that self-sacrifice could finally buy the love he never received unconditionally. This is where we bring in the shadow, Jung's idea that every part of ourselves we reject doesn't disappear, it becomes unconscious. So if you want to stop being too available, stop trying to earn love by suppressing your boundaries. This is the beginning of emotional sovereignty. It's when you no longer seek safety in someone else because you've created safety within yourself. This is what it means to set emotional boundaries, not walls, Boundaries. Boundaries say, I am still here, still open, but I will not abandon myself to be loved by you. Real love is when two full people bring all of themselves to the table. Not just the pretty parts, not just the agreeable ones, but the full spectrum. You want intimacy, okay? Then you have to be visible, not just useful, not just sweet, but seen. And you can be seen if you keep hiding behind generosity that's actually fear in disguise. When you finally say, no more. No more shrinking, no more pleasing, no more performing love in the hope that someone might reflect it back. That's when you finally meet the world and women with real energy, not fractured energy, not desperate or overextended, but solid, still yours. Boundaries say, I can hold your chaos, but not at the cost of my own center. Myself, or a version of me designed to be chosen. That's the fracture. And healing that fracture means returning to your source, to your truth, to the version of you who doesn't need to be needed to feel worthy. Who knows that silence from her doesn't equal a verdict on your value. Who no longer confuses rejection with reality. And boundaries aren't just for others, they're for you. So you stop spiraling, so you stop giving yourself away in pieces, hoping someone will give you back a sense of wholeness. You've been calling your availability love, but real love is not about self-erasure. So now, ask yourself, when I say I'm available, what am I really offering? And once you find that version of you, once you stop leaking energy into people who do know how to hold it, you'll realize something surprising. Your availability, isn't a weakness, it's your gift, but only when it's rooted in choice, not fear. When it's sacred, not desperate. When you're not giving to be loved, you're re-giving because love already lives inside you. That's when everything shifts. So what happens when you stop giving to be chosen? When you stop offering your time, your body, your emotional bandwidth as an audition, and something changes. You start noticing who sticks around, who shows up when you're not giving them everything first, who's curious about your silence, not just your service, who values your presence, not your performance. Because here's the paradox. When you become less available from need, you become more magnetic from truth. You stop chasing women who crave attention but fear intimacy. And instead, you start attracting women who don't want you to disappear into them. You're not giving because you're afraid to lose her. Instead, ask yourself this: is this action honest? Is it aligned? Is it coming from truth or from panic? Am I giving because I want to, or because I'm afraid not to? You're giving because you have something to give. There's a difference. A man who gives from fullness feels grounded. A man who gives from fear feels frantic. She can feel the difference. One pulls her closer, the other makes her run. Women who don't need to feel needed to feel powerful. Women who respect your time because they feel the weight of your presence. That's what healthy love looks like. Not conditional giving, not emotional deals, just truth, mutual choice. A relationship built on two people who know who they are and choose to meet. Not because they have to, but because they want to. The man who no longer gives to be loved, that man is powerful because he doesn't confuse giving with disappearing. He doesn't confuse generosity with submission. He knows that presence is not a currency to be traded. It's a gift to be protected. But what it actually did was kill polarity. It turned your connection into something safe, but not alive. Because women don't fall for safety. They fall for depth, for contrast. It's for the man who's not afraid to be still in his own fire. Not angry, not cold, present. And women feel that. They feel it in the way you hold your ground when the conversation gets emotional. Then you have to stop showing up as who you think she wants and start showing up as who you really are. That means showing the edges, the honesty. It's a part of you that says, I want you, but I don't need you to validate me. That's not arrogance. That's emotional maturity. 'Cause from that place, you can actually give love without chasing. You can express care without expecting a receipt. You can be available, but never empty. They feel it when you don't rush in to fix everything. When you don't abandon your opinion just to keep the peace. When you can stay with yourself while staying connected to her. That's presence. That's strength. The old version of you, the one always available, always texting first, always folding. That version was trying to keep the connection alive by any means necessary. You want her to see you. This is when relationships change, because now you're not building from fear. So stop asking, how much should I give? When should I text back? When is it too much? Okay, those are the questions of a man still performing. Okay, because when you act from alignment, everything you give becomes a reflection of your wholeness, not a strategy to secure someone else's affection. This is why you were never the problem, because at your core, all you've ever wanted was to be seen, valued, and loved, not for your performance, but for your presence. After the illusion breaks, after you stop chasing, after you stop waking up each morning wondering what you did wrong, why she pulled away, why your effort wasn't enough. What do you do when you're no longer performing, no longer stretching yourself into the shape of someone more likable, more passive, more safe? The problem was never your heart. It was how you were taught to use it. Not with anyone. You began with you. You learned to make your coffee in silence, without checking your phone. You learned to walk into your room at night and not feel the emptiness as a failure, but as freedom. It's the place where you stop being what the world wants from you, okay? And start remembering who you actually are. You reclaim your self-respect. Speak slower. You stop explaining your silence. You stop asking what they think of you and start asking what you think of you. You don't abandon kindness. You just remove the need for applause. You're no longer the man who mistakes silence for rejection. You're no longer the man who collapses when he's not chosen. You don't lose softness. You just add boundaries. Start to see that your worth doesn't live in someone else's eyes. It never did. And every time you handed over your emotional power to be validated, to be told you're good enough, you lost a little more of yourself. Maybe she'll meet you at your level, not to complete you, not to fix you, not to take care of you, but to walk beside you, as an equal, as a mirror, as a partner. But even if she doesn't, you're not waiting, because the life you're building now, it's not about being needed, it's about being true. But now, you're pulling it back, not angrily, it's quietly, deliberately. You were taught that being available made you worthy. But the truth is, you're already worthy. Your availability means nothing if you're not whole when you show up. So, what happens next? You begin again, but not with her. You learn to sit in your own presence and not feel panic. You were never the problem. Your need to be needed was. And now, that's dying. Not because you hate yourself, but because you've outgrown that version of you. You no longer need to be available to everyone to feel like someone. You no longer confuse loneliness with unworthiness. You don't just handle being alone, you honor it. Because here's the truth, most men never get taught. Your solitude is your power, not your punishment. Case where you realize, I, Dan T, have to give myself away to be chosen. I don't have to perform to be loved. I don't have to be always there, just to not be forgotten. You reclaim your time, reclaim your nervous system. And now, you're not waiting for someone to choose you anymore, because you already chose yourself. Okay, and maybe someone will come. Okay, you're no longer the man who begs for love through over-availability. You're the man who knows. Being too available was never the problem. Not being rooted in your own truth was. And now you're here. Rooted.com. Free. Not waiting. Just living.